The glow of the computer screen cut through the humid haze of the Atlanta Police Department's cold case unit, painting erratic shadows on the cluttered desk of Detective Alex Rivera. It was a sweltering Thursday in late April 2022, the kind of sticky Georgia spring day where the air conditioner wheezed like an old man fighting for breath, and the distant rumble of thunder promised rain that never quite cooled things down. Alex had been at it for hours, slogging through a backlog of consumer DNA submissions from those ancestry kits everyone seemed obsessed with these days. Cross-referencing them against the state's dusty database of unsolved files, looking for the rare hit that could breathe life into a ghost story. This was the grind of detective work, the part no one romanticized on TV. Endless scrolling through genetic profiles, chasing probabilities that usually led nowhere. Most shifts ended with nothing but a lukewarm vending machine coffee and the dull ache of another dead end. Alex rubbed his eyes, the screen's blue light blurring the edges of his vision. He'd joined the force 15 years ago, chasing the adrenaline of chases and collars, but these days, it was all archives and algorithms. Still, there was a quiet rhythm to it, a hope that flickered like the cursor blinking on his monitor. Then it pinged. A soft chime, innocuous as a text notification, but in this room, it might as well have been a gunshot. Alex straightened, his chair creaking under him. The software had flagged a match, 99.8% parental probability. One profile from a recent ancestry submission uploaded by a 34-year-old woman named Harper Ellis, a freelance graphic designer from Midtown Atlanta. The other from a file buried deep in the 1992 cold cases. Kennedy Hayes, missing since July 12th that year, last seen at age 4. Status, presumed deceased. Alex's pulse quickened, a familiar mix of skepticism and adrenaline surging through him. He leaned in, the stale scent of printer ink and fast food wrappers forgotten. Kennedy Hayes. The name tugged at something in his memory, a case from his academy days, one of those childhood tragedies that stuck like kudzu. A little girl vanishing from a family picnic in the North Georgia woods near the Blue Ridge foothills. The database pulled up the basics, born March 15, 1988, to Robert and Clara Hayes. Abducted or lost or worse from Amicalola Falls State Park during a humid weekend getaway. No body ever found. No leads that panned out. The file had gone cold faster than most, a heartbreaking footnote in a summer of senseless losses. He cross-checked the dates. Harper Ellis, born March 15, 1988, or at least that's what her submitted records claimed. A falsified birth certificate, maybe? Alex's mind raced ahead. At 4 years old, kids that age didn't just wander off and reinvent themselves 30 years later. They didn't grow up, build careers, marry, and casually spit in a tube for family tree fun. The missing stayed. Echoes. The presumed dead stayed buried in yellowed reports. But the numbers didn't lie. 99.8%. That was as close to certainty as DNA got without a courtroom confession. Son of a bitch, Alex muttered, his voice swallowed by the hum of fluorescent lights. He grabbed his phone, fingers hovering over the captain's number, then set it down. Protocol said verify first, run it through the lab techs, double the profiles. But his gut, honed from too many false hopes, whispered this was real. He printed the match report, the paper curling slightly in the humid air, and stared at the side-by-side profiles. Harper Ellis's sample, innocuous and recent. Kennedy Hayes's, extracted from a baby tooth her parents had submitted back in '93, a desperate Hail Mary after the searches fizzled. Within 20 minutes, the unit's back office felt like a war room. Captain Lena Torres, a no-nonsense veteran with 25 years, and a scar from a '90s meth bust across her knuckles, peered over Alex's shoulder, her reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. Sergeant Jamal Hayes, no relation to the family, thank God, hunched over his laptop, pulling Harper's public records. Clean driving history, a modest condo in Midtown, married to a software engineer named Theo. No kids, no priors. Just a woman living the quiet Atlanta life, weekends at Piedmont Park, brunches in Virginia Highland. And then there was Detective Riley Chen, the department's forensic genealogist, a whip-smart import from California, who treated DNA like a puzzle only she could solve. She ran the verification twice, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "It's her," Riley said finally, her voice steady but edged with the weight of it. Or her identical twin, which, given the timelines and locations, is about as likely as Bigfoot running for mayor. The markers align perfectly. Mitochondrial, YSTR if it were male, the works. Lena crossed her arms, her dark eyes narrowing. "I remember this one. I was in uniform up in Forsyth County when it broke. Every cop from here to Chattanooga dropped everything. We had helicopters, cadaver dogs, volunteers from every church picnic in 3 counties. Dragged the Chattahoochee, combed the trails around the falls. Folks pasted flyers on every Waffle House and gas station from Dahlonega to Gainesville. Nothing, not a ribbon from her dress, not a footprint in the red clay." Alex nodded, flipping through the digital file on his second screen. The photos hit like a gut punch. A cherubic 4-year-old with tousled auburn curls, big hazel eyes that seemed to hold the whole world, grinning in a faded snapshot from her last preschool Easter egg hunt. She was wearing a yellow sundress with tiny ducklings printed on it, clutching a stuffed rabbit named Harper. The report detailed the last sighting, 3:17 p.m., toddling after her older brother near the picnic area, chasing fireflies in the dappled shade of oaks and hickories. Her mother, Clara, had turned away for 30 seconds to flip burgers on the grill. When she looked back, Kennedy was gone. Theories had swirled like gnats in that July heat, wandered into the woods and fallen down an embankment, swept into a creek swollen from spring rains. Snatched by a drifter, there'd been whispers of a white van spotted idling near the park entrance, but no plates, no description solid enough to chase. A false lead had burned bright for a week. Some low-life handyman from Ellijay, caught with a child's shoe in his truck that didn't match Kennedy's size 7 sneakers. He'd done time for it, but the case crumbled without evidence. By August, the daily searches dwindled to weekends led by Robert Hayes, a stubborn mill worker who refused to let the forest win. Clara never recovered. She passed in '98 from what the coroner called complications of grief, but everyone knew it was a broken heart. Robert was still kicking, last Alex checked, pushing 60 now, retired in a double-wide trailer outside Cumming, clinging to the what-ifs. And Jack, the brother, had moved to Savannah, built a life as a high school teacher, but the file noted he'd sent annual tips to the hotline until it went dark in the early 2000s. "So what's the play?" Jamal asked, breaking the heavy silence. "We roll up on this Harper Ellis like she's a suspect?" "Hey ma'am, turns out you're a missing kid from '92? Lena shook her head, pinching the bridge of her nose. "No, she's the victim here, potentially. We approach soft with a counselor. Get her to a neutral spot, explain the match without the drama. If it's her, her world's flipping upside down. And if it's not," she trailed off. The odds said it was. Alex volunteered to lead the contact. He'd always had a way with the shaken ones, the folks whose lives unraveled in interview rooms. By evening, they'd pieced a plan. Swing by her condo after her freelance shift, 2 detectives and a trauma specialist from Grady's psych unit. No lights, no sirens, just a knock. That would change everything. As the team dispersed, Alex lingered, staring at Kennedy's photo. Those eyes, innocent and wide, stared back from the screen. 30 years. A lifetime, stolen in the blink of an afternoon. He wondered what she'd become. Harper Ellis, graphic designer, wife, neighbor who waved at the barista on the corner. Did she sense the void, the shape of a life that wasn't hers, or had time papered it over with routines and forgetfulness? Outside, the first fat drops of rain splattered the precinct windows, turning the city lights into smeared halos. Alex grabbed his jacket, the weight of the case settling on his shoulders like the gathering storm. This wasn't just a match. It was resurrection. And in Georgia, where the past clung like Spanish moss, resurrections never came clean. The drive to Midtown cut through rush-hour snarl, wipers slapping against the downpour. Harper Ellis's building was a sleek mid-rise on Peachtree, the kind of place young professionals flocked to. Glass balconies dripping with ferns, a lobby that smelled of fresh coffee and ambition. Alex parked curbside, the rain drumming on the roof like impatient fingers. Beside him, Riley checked her notes one last time, while Dr. Elena Vasquez, the counselor, breathed slow and steady in the back seat, her calm a deliberate anchor. They buzzed up from the lobby, the intercom crackling with static. "Atlanta PD, ma'am. We'd like to speak with Harper Ellis about a personal matter." A pause, then the door clicked open. Elevator to the 5th floor, a soft chime, and there was 5C. A door painted matte black, a welcome mat that read, "Blessed and Grateful," in wrought iron letters. Alex knocked. 3 measured raps, footsteps inside, hesitant. The door cracked, chain still latched, revealing a woman in her mid-30s, auburn hair pulled into a loose ponytail, freckles dusting her nose like cinnamon. She wore oversized glasses and a paint-splattered smock over jeans, as if she'd been sketching at her drafting table. Hazel eyes, wary but curious. "Harper Ellis?" Alex asked, flashing his badge just enough to register. "I'm Detective Rivera. This is Sergeant Chen and Dr. Vasquez. We won't take much of your time, but it's important. Mind if we step inside?" Her brow furrowed, a flicker of unease crossing her face. The instinctive flinch of anyone hearing police on a rainy evening. "Is this about the car? I swear that ticket was a mix-up." "No, ma'am, nothing like that." Riley's voice was gentle, practiced. "It's about your family history, something from an ancestry test you might have done recently." Harper unlatched the chain, stepping back to let them in. The apartment was cozy chaos, exposed brick walls lined with mood boards pinned to cork, a drafting table cluttered with markers and half-finished logos, the faint scent of jasmine candle mingling with takeout tie. A wedding photo on the mantel showed her beaming beside a lanky guy with a kind smile. Theo, no doubt, both of them younger, unscarred by whatever was coming. They settled in the living room, Harper on the edge of a velvet armchair, knees tucked up defensively. Alex took the couch, keeping his posture open, hands visible. Dr. Vasquez sat adjacent, her notebook closed on her lap, a signal of listening, not interrogating. "Harper," Alex started, his tone even, "you submitted a DNA sample to a genealogy service a few months back, right? For tracing roots?" She nodded slowly, twisting a silver ring on her thumb. "Yeah, back in January. Theo's obsessed with that stuff. His side's got this whole Irish clan thing. Mine's a blank slate, so I figured, why not? Turns out I'm mostly Scots-Irish with a dash of something native. Nothing wild." A small laugh, brittle. "Why? Did I match some serial killer ancestor or something?" Riley exchanged a glance with Alex, then slid a printed sheet across the coffee table. The match report, redacted just enough to soften the blow. "Not quite, but your sample flagged something in our database, a cold case from 1992, a missing child named Kennedy Hayes." Harper's eyes dropped to the paper, scanning the percentages, the timelines. Confusion knit her features, then something deeper, a dawning fracture. "Kennedy Hayes? That's not me. I mean, my birthday's March 15th, 1988, but I was born in Savannah, raised by my aunt after my parents died, in a wreck when I was little." That's what she always said. "Aunt Margaret? She passed 5 years ago, ovarian cancer. Left me the house in Decatur, everything." Dr. Vasquez leaned forward slightly, her voice a soft tether. "Harper, the DNA doesn't lie. The match is parental, 99.8%. That means, biologically, you're Kennedy Hayes." The room tilted into silence, broken only by the rain pattering against the floor-to-ceiling windows. Harper's face drained of color, her hands gripping the armrests until her knuckles gleamed white. "That's impossible. I have records. A birth certificate, school photos. I went to Lakeside High, graduated 2006. She trailed off, eyes distant, as if sifting through a lifetime for cracks. Alex watched her, the weight of 30 years pressing down. This was the moment worlds collided, the quiet life of Harper Ellis shattering against the ghost of a 4-year-old girl who'd vanished into Georgia's green heart. Outside, thunder rolled, low and ominous, as if the sky itself mourned what was lost and what was found. The rain had settled into a steady Georgia downpour by the time Alex Rivera returned to the precinct that night, the kind that turned the red clay shoulders of the highways into slick ribbons and made every headlight bleed across the windshield. He couldn't go home. Not yet. The image of Harper Ellis's face, that slow collapse from confusion to something raw and unnameable, kept replaying behind his eyes. He needed the file. The whole file. Not just the digital summary, but the physical one. The box that had gathered dust in the basement archives since the early 2000s. The cold case storage room smelled of mildew and old paper, the fluorescent tubes flickering like they resented being woken. Alex signed out Box 92-147, Hayes, Kennedy M. The cardboard was soft from humidity, the label faded but still legible in black marker. He carried it to his desk, flipped off the overhead lights, and worked by the glow of his lamp and the storm flashing through the blinds. Inside, time folded in on itself. The top layer was the initial missing person report, dated July 12, 1992. Typed on a dot matrix printer, the edges perforated and yellowed. Subject, white female juvenile, age 4 years 4 months. Name, Kennedy Marie Hayes. Diob, 03/15/1988. Hair, auburn. Eyes, hazel. Height, 3'4". Weight, approx. 38 lb. Last seen wearing yellow sundress with duckling print, white sandals, carrying stuffed rabbit, Harper. Distinguishing marks, small birthmark shaped like Georgia on left shoulder blade. The narrative was clinical, but the desperation leaked through anyway. The Hayes family, Robert, 34, Clara, 32, and son Jack, 10, had driven up from their modest ranch house in Cumming for a Saturday picnic at Amicalola Falls State Park. Standard Georgia summer ritual, cooler full of fried chicken and sweet tea, kids running wild while the adults spread. Quilts under the oaks. Robert had been manning the grill, flipping burgers and chatting with another dad about the Braves' chances that year. Clara had been unpacking deviled eggs and potato salad, keeping half an eye on Kennedy, who was chasing early fireflies near the edge of the tree line with Jack. Jack had turned away for a minute, later he'd say maybe 2, to throw a frisbee with a boy from another family. When he looked back, Kennedy was gone. No cry, no splash, just absence. Clara noticed first. She'd called Kennedy's name once, twice, then louder, her voice climbing into panic. Robert dropped the spatula, sprinted to the wood's edge. Within 10 minutes, the picnic area was chaos, families packing up, strangers forming search lines, someone running to the ranger station. By 5 p.m., park rangers had radios crackling. By 6 p.m., Forsyth County deputies arrived. By dusk, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation was on site, floodlights cutting through the humid dark. The search was massive for its time. Hundreds of volunteers, church groups, Boy Scouts, off-duty firefighters combed the trails and ravines for days. Cadaver dogs from as far as Alabama worked the creek beds. Divers dragged the lower pools where the falls fed into the Etowah River. Helicopters with infrared swept the canopy. The local news ran Kennedy's photo every night for 2 weeks. That gap-toothed grin, the auburn curls catching sunlight, the stuffed rabbit clutched like a talisman. Flyers went up everywhere. Piggly Wiggly bulletin boards, the Texaco on Highway 9, the bulletin board at Jack's elementary school. Someone even stapled them to telephone poles along GA 400. Tips flooded in. A man in a white van seen near the park entrance. No plate, vague description. A woman hearing a child crying deep in the woods at twilight, never corroborated. A drifter camping illegally near Dawsonville who vanished the next day. One lead burned hottest. A maintenance worker named Curtis Lee Dodd, 38, history of indecent exposure, lived in a trailer outside Ellijay. Someone reported seeing his rusted Chevy pickup near the park that afternoon. When deputies searched his place 3 days later, they found a child's sandal in the truck bed, size 7, pink with a daisy. Dodd swore it belonged to his niece. The sandal didn't match Kennedy's white ones, and his alibi, drinking at a bar in Dahlonega, held up with 3 witnesses. Still, the press ran with it. Dodd lost his job, moved to Florida, and the trail cooled. By late August, the daily searches became weekend only. By fall, only Robert Hayes still walked the trails every Saturday, calling his daughter's name into the wind until his voice gave out. Clara stopped eating, stopped sleeping. She kept Kennedy's room exactly as it was, Hopper the rabbit on the pillow, tiny dresses hanging in the closet like ghosts. In 1998, 6 years after the disappearance, Clara died quietly in her sleep. The doctor wrote cardiac arrhythmia, but Robert told anyone who asked it was grief, pure and simple. The file thinned after that. Annual reviews, perfunctory notes, no new leads. Family maintains hope. Case remains open but inactive. The last entry, dated 2005, was a single line from a retiring detective. Father continues to submit tips, recommend continued monitoring of NCIC. Alex closed the box, the weight of 30 years pressing on his chest. He pulled out the photographs again. Kennedy at 3, riding her. Plastic tricycle in the driveway, red clay dust on the wheels. Kennedy at 4, Easter basket in hand, eyes squinting against the Georgia sun. And the family portrait from Christmas '91, Robert with his arm around Clara, Jack grinning awkwardly in braces, and Kennedy on Clara's lap, reaching for the camera as if she could already sense the lens loved her. There were witness statements, too. Jack's, handwritten in a 10-year-old's careful block letters. I was supposed to watch her. I looked away. I'm sorry. A park ranger who remembered the white van but couldn't recall the driver. A woman from Marietta who swore she saw a little girl matching Kennedy's description at a rest stop on I-75 southbound, crying in the passenger seat of a dark sedan. No follow-up. No plate. Alex leaned back, the storm still lashing the windows. Somewhere out there, Harper Ellis was trying to sleep in her midtown condo, the ground shifting beneath everything she'd believed about herself. And somewhere north of the city, Robert Hayes, now 64, alone in his trailer, was about to get a phone call that would either resurrect him or finish breaking what was left. He glanced at the clock. 2:17 a.m. Too late to call the old man tonight. Protocol said notify the biological family only after secondary DNA confirmation from the lab, expected Monday. But Alex knew captains could bend rules when miracles knocked. He picked up the family portrait again, Kennedy's tiny hand reaching toward the camera, toward the future that had been stolen from her in the space between one breath and the next. Outside, the rain eased into a whisper against the glass, the way Georgia storms always do, fierce and sudden, then gone, leaving everything soaked and strangely new. Alex turned off the lamp. In the dark, he could almost hear the cicadas from that long-ago July, buzzing in the hot pines, indifferent to a little girl's disappearance. The woods had kept their secret for 30 years. Now the secret was coming home. But home, Alex thought as he locked up the box and headed into the wet night, might not look anything like what anyone remembered. The rain had stopped by Friday morning, leaving Atlanta steaming under a low gray sky, the kind of humidity that made shirts cling and tempers short. Alex Rivera hadn't slept much. He'd spent the night reviewing Harper Ellis's public footprint, social media scrubbed private, a professional website showcasing clean, minimalist graphic design work, a LinkedIn profile that listed freelance clients from local breweries to nonprofit arts councils. Nothing flashy, nothing that screamed stolen life, just a woman in her 30s carving out a quiet, creative niche in a noisy city. The secondary DNA confirmation came in at 9:03 a.m., Riley Chen's email subject line blunt, 99.83%, irrefutable. Captain Torres gave the green light. They would approach Harper at home again early evening when her husband Theo would likely be there for support. Dr. Elena Vasquez would join, along with a female uniformed officer for softness. No ambush, no media leak. Yet, Alex drove the unmarked sedan up Peachtree, the city pulsing around him, brake lights like red fireflies, the smell of wet asphalt and Chick-fil-A exhaust drifting through the vents. Riley rode shotgun, scrolling through Harper's Instagram stories on a burner account, weekend hikes at Sweetwater Creek, coffee art at a shop in Inman Park, a candid of Theo laughing at some rooftop bar. Normal, enviably normal. They parked in the guest spots beneath Harper's building, the same mid-rise they'd visited 2 nights earlier. This time the lobby felt heavier, the elevator slower. Alex rehearsed the words in his head, not an accusation, not a celebration. Just truth, delivered as gently as truth ever allows. Harper opened the door after the second knock, and Alex could tell she'd been waiting for it. She wore the same oversized glasses, but the paint-smudged smock had been replaced by a simple gray sweater, sleeves pulled over her hands like armor. Behind her, a man in his late 30s, tall, dark-haired, wearing a faded Georgia Tech hoodie, stood with one protective hand on the back of the couch. Theo. His eyes flicked to the badges, then to his wife's face, reading the fear there. "Come in," Harper said, her voice smaller than before. "I figured you'd be back." They settled in the same places as Wednesday night, but the room felt different, charged, like the air before lightning. Theo sat beside Harper, close enough that their knees touched. Dr. Vasquez took the armchair again, her presence calm and non-threatening. Alex and Riley on the couch, uniformed Officer Grant by the door, mostly for protocol. Harper didn't wait for them to start. "I haven't slept," she admitted, twisting that same silver ring. "I keep thinking it's a mistake, some lab mix-up, but I looked up the case, Kennedy Hayes, the pictures. She looks like me, or I look like her, God. She..." exhaled shakily. "I called in sick to a client today, told Theo everything you said." Theo reached for her hand, squeezed it. His jaw was tight, but his voice steady. "We just want to understand. Whatever this is." Alex nodded, leaning forward slightly. "We have the final lab confirmation this morning. Harper, the DNA match is conclusive. You are Kennedy Marie Hayes, biologically. Born March 15, 1988, to Robert and Clara Hayes of Cumming, Georgia. Reported missing July 12, 1992, from Amicalola Falls State Park." The words landed like stones in still water. Harper's eyes filled, but no tears fell yet, just a glassy, stunned stare. Theo's grip on her hand tightened until his knuckles blanched. "I don't remember any of that," she whispered. "I don't remember a park, or a picnic, or parents. My earliest memory is Aunt Margaret's house in Decatur, the yellow kitchen wallpaper with the little apples. She told me my mom and dad died in a car crash on I-20 when I was 3, that she took me in because there was no one else. She had paperwork, birth certificate, social security card, everything. I never questioned it." "Why would I?" Riley spoke softly. "Those documents were likely forged. It's common in long-term parental abductions. The perpetrator creates a new identity, isolates the child, feeds them a cover story young enough to take root." Harper flinched at abduction, as if the word itself burned. "Aunt Margaret? She wasn't cruel. Strict, maybe. Church every Sunday, no sleepovers, private Christian school until 8th grade. But she baked cookies at Christmas, read me stories, took me to the library every Saturday." Her voice cracked. "She died thinking I was her niece. I sat with her in the hospital, held her hand when the machine stopped." Dr. Vasquez leaned in, her tone warm but direct. "Harper, what you're feeling, confusion, grief for the woman who raised you, anger that your history might be false. It's all completely normal. You're processing a massive trauma, even if you don't remember the original event. At 4 years old, the brain often protects itself by compartmentalizing. You may never recover clear memories of the abduction itself." Theo cleared his throat, his first words since they'd sat down. "So who took her? If she wasn't family, then how did she—" "We don't know yet," Alex said. "Margaret Klein, that was her legal name, died in 2017. No criminal record, no prior reports. She worked as a secretary for a law firm in Decatur from the late 80s through the 2000s. Never married, no other children. We're pulling her financials, phone records, anything that might show travel to North Georgia in July 92. But 30 years is a long time. Evidence degrades." Harper stood abruptly, pacing to the window. The city sprawled below, cars crawling along Peachtree, the Fox Theater marquee glowing in the distance. "I keep thinking about little things," she said, almost to herself. "Stupid stuff, like how I hate the smell of barbecue smoke. Makes my stomach turn, ever since I was a kid. Margaret never grilled, said it was too messy. Or how cicadas in summer make me sad for no reason. And cameras. I've always loved old film cameras, collect them. Theo teases me about it." She turned back, eyes searching theirs. "Do those mean anything, or am I just trying to force connections?" Alex hesitated. The file mentioned the Hayes family grilling burgers that day. Cicadas had been deafening in the witness statements, July in Georgia, and Robert Hayes had been an avid photographer, always with his Canon AE-1, documenting every birthday, every holiday. "They might," he said carefully. "Sensory memories. Can linger even when narrative ones don't. Smells, sounds, they're stored differently in the brain." Harper wrapped her arms around herself. "I looked up my Kennedy's family last night. Robert Hayes still lives in the same area code. Jack Hayes teaches history in Savannah. Clara died when I was when Kennedy was 10. A tear finally escaped, sliding down her cheek. I read the obituaries, the articles from back then. People said Clara never recovered, that she died of a broken heart. Theo stood, moved to her side, but she stepped away, not rejecting him, just needing space. I don't know how to do this, she said, voice breaking. Do I call this man, say, "Hi, I'm your daughter who vanished 30 years ago"? What if he doesn't believe it? What if he hates me for not remembering him, for living a whole life without him? Dr. Vasquez spoke gently. You don't have to decide anything today. This is a process, Harper. Weeks, months, maybe years. Some found children choose contact immediately. Others wait. Some never do. There's no right timeline. But he's old, Harper said. 64, and alone from what I could find. What if he dies before She stopped, the sentence too heavy to finish. Alex pulled a folder from his briefcase, slid it across the coffee table. Inside, printouts of Kennedy's childhood photos, carefully selected, not the missing posters, but the happy ones. Kennedy on a swing, auburn curls flying. Kennedy blowing out 4 candles on a cake shaped like a rabbit. Kennedy asleep on Clara's shoulder, thumb in mouth. Harper stared at them for a long minute. Theo looked too, his arm finally settling around her waist. When she spoke again, her voice was barely audible. She looks happy, like she was loved. She was, Alex said, very much. Harper closed the folder, hands trembling. I need time to process, to talk to Theo, but can you tell Robert, gently, that there's a match, that Kennedy's alive, just not yet ready? Alex nodded. We'll coordinate with a counselor up in Forsyth County. Make sure he's supported when he hears. As they stood to leave, Harper stopped them at the door. Detective Rivera, when you find out how Margaret did it, why she took me, will you tell me, even if it's ugly? Alex met her eyes, those hazel eyes that had stared out from missing posters for 3 decades. Yes, you deserve the truth. All of it. Outside, the humidity had thickened again, the sky bruising toward another storm. Alex paused on the sidewalk, watching the building's glass doors reflect the city back at itself. Inside apartment 5C, a woman was unraveling 34 years of carefully constructed reality. Riley broke the silence. You think she'll reach out to Robert? Alex exhaled slowly. Eventually, when she's ready. But ready might take a long time. Thunder rumbled in the distance, low and rolling, like the past finally catching up. The days after the second visit blurred into a haze for Harper. Ellis. Time lost its edges. She called it the fog, this strange suspension where hours slipped by unnoticed, meals forgotten, messages unread. Theo took leave from his software job, working remotely from the couch with his laptop balanced on his knees, eyes flicking to her every few minutes like she might vanish if he looked away too long. They didn't talk much at first. What words could hold this? Harper drifted through the apartment touching things as if testing their reality. The drafting table where she'd spent countless nights perfecting logos, the shelf of vintage film cameras she'd collected from estate sales and flea markets, the wedding album with its embossed cover gathering dust on a lower shelf, all of it built on a foundation that had just crumbled. On the 3rd night, she finally opened the folder Alex had left. Alone in the bedroom while Theo showered, she spread the photographs across the duvet like tarot cards from a deck she didn't understand. Kennedy at 2, chubby-cheeked and laughing in a waiting pool. Kennedy at 3, finger-painting at a plastic easel, blue smears across her nose. Kennedy at 4, the last one, standing in the red clay driveway of a ranch house, holding Hopper the rabbit, squinting into the sun with that same auburn hair that Harper now saw in her own mirror every morning. She stared until the images blurred, until she wasn't sure where Kennedy ended and Harper began. The resemblance wasn't subtle. It was undeniable. Same freckles across the bridge of the nose, same slight tilt to the left eye when smiling, same stubborn cowlick at the crown. I don't remember you, she whispered to the little girl in the photos. I'm sorry. I don't remember any of it. Theo found her there at midnight, photos scattered, tears silent on her cheeks. He didn't ask questions, just gathered them carefully, stacked them back in the folder, and held her until dawn crept through the blinds in pale Atlanta light. The final official DNA report arrived Monday via secure email from Riley Chen. Harper printed it at the corner pharmacy because she needed it physical, needed to hold the proof in her hands. 20 pages of scientific language, alleles, loci, probability statistics, but the conclusion was brutally simple. Harper Margaret Ellis is the biological daughter of Robert Hayes and Clara Hayes, deceased. Identity confirmed as Kennedy Marie Hayes, reported missing July 12, 1992. Margaret. Harper's middle name had come from Aunt Margaret, a tribute Margaret had always said. Now it felt like a brand. That afternoon, Alex and Riley returned. With more. Not accusations, but pieces of a puzzle they'd been assembling since the match. They sat at Harper's kitchen table this time, the one usually covered in sketches and coffee rings, now cleared, except for the DNA report and a fresh legal pad where Theo took notes like this was a client meeting he could somehow solve. Margaret Klein, Alex began, sliding a grainy driver's license photo across the table. A woman in her late 40s, thin-faced, dark hair pulled severely back, eyes that looked tired even in the DMV flash. Born 1948 in Macon, only child, parents deceased by 1985. Worked as a legal secretary in Decatur from 1987 until retirement in 2012. No criminal history. Church elder at Decatur First Baptist. Known in her neighborhood as quiet, respectable. Kept to herself. Harper stared at the photo. The face was familiar in the way family faces are. Lines around the mouth she'd seen in her own mirror during stressful weeks, the same narrow jaw. But the eyes were different, or maybe Harper just wanted them to be. She never married, Riley continued, but in 1992 she took 3 weeks of vacation, the only extended leave in her employment record, July 8th through July 29th. We pulled her credit card statements from archives, gas purchases in Dahlonega on July 11th, groceries in Gainesville on July 13th, then nothing until August. Theo's pen stopped moving. She planned it. We think so, Alex said carefully. The white van witness from the park, that lead went nowhere in 92, but Margaret owned a white Ford Econoline from 1990 to 1995. Registered in her name, she sold it right after Kennedy, after you, would have started kindergarten age. Harper felt the room tilt. She enrolled me in preschool as Harper Ellis in the fall of 93. Said I needed to be with other children after being so sheltered by my parents before they died. I remember my first day. I cried when she left me there. The memories came in fragments now, not of the abduction. She had none of those, but of the life Margaret built afterward. The strict routines, no sleepovers, no questions about family beyond the car crash story. The way Margaret had hovered, always watching, always correcting. Good girls don't ask too many questions, Harper. Good girls are grateful for what they have. I thought she was protecting me, Harper said, voice hollow. From the grief, from losing my parents so young. She said remembering would hurt too much, so we didn't talk about them, ever. There were no photos, no stories. Just forward. Always forward. Dr. Vasquez, who'd joined them again, spoke gently. That's a common pattern in familial abductions. The perpetrator convinces themselves they're saving the child, giving them a better life. Margaret may have genuinely believed she was your mother by the end. But she wasn't, Harper said sharply, then softer. She wasn't. They'd found more in Margaret's effects, boxed up after her death and stored in the basement of the Decatur house Harper had inherited but never lived in. The team had executed a search warrant yesterday. Alex laid out Polaroids now, carefully, like handling explosives. Harper at 5, gap-toothed in a private school uniform. Harper at 7, posed stiffly in front of a Christmas tree. Harper at 10, holding a library book prize, all labeled in Margaret's neat secretarial hand. Harper, first day of school, 1993. Harper's baptism, 1995. Harper, age 10, 1998. But beneath those, in a locked metal box at the bottom, the truth. Kennedy's original birth certificate, folded carefully, edges worn as if handled often. Kennedy's Social Security card application, never filed. A tiny hospital bracelet from Northside Hospital, March 1988. And worst, a newspaper clipping from July 1992. 4-year-old girl vanishes from State Park. Kennedy's face staring out from the grainy black and white print. Margaret had kept trophies, or reminders, or both. Harper touched the clipping with one finger, tracing the outline of her 4-year-old face. She saved this. All these years, why? No one had an answer. That night, after the detectives left, Harper stood in the shower until the water ran cold. She scrubbed at her skin as if she could wash away 30 years of someone else's story. When she finally emerged, wrapped in Theo's robe that swallowed her whole, she found him at the kitchen table with his laptop open to Margaret's obituary. "She had a sister," he said quietly. "Died in childbirth in 1975. The baby didn't make it either. Margaret was 27, never married after that. The obituary says she devoted her life to her faith and her community." Harper sank into the chair opposite him. "She wanted a child, couldn't have one, saw me alone for 30 seconds and—" She couldn't finish. Theo closed the laptop. "You were 4. You didn't go willingly. She took you." The reality hit then, not as intellectual understanding, but as physical pain in her chest. Harper doubled over, a sound escaping that was half sob, half scream. Theo was around the table in seconds, holding her as she shook. "I called her Aunt Margaret," she gasped between sobs. "I loved her. I mourned her. I kept her damn teacup collection because it reminded me of Sunday tea times. And the whole time she stole me. She stole everything." The grief came in waves. For Kennedy, the little girl who'd lost her mother, her father, her brother, her name. For Clara, who died never knowing her daughter lived 20 miles away. For Robert, waiting alone in his trailer. For Margaret, twisted by whatever desperation had driven her to this unforgivable act. And for Harper herself, the woman who'd built a life on lies, who now had to dismantle it brick by brick. Theo held her through all of it, whispering nothing and everything, that he loved her, that none of this was her fault, that they would figure it out together. At 3 a.m., Harper sat on the balcony watching the city lights shimmer through tears. She thought about the sensory fragments that had always puzzled her, the way barbecue smoke made her nauseous, the melancholy of summer cicadas, her inexplicable love for film photography. Not memories, exactly, but echoes, her body remembering what her mind had been forced to forget. She pulled out her phone, opened the browser she'd left on Robert Hayes's Facebook page, private, but the profile picture visible. An older man with auburn hair gone mostly gray, standing in front of a modest trailer with a small garden, his face weathered but kind, eyes that looked like they'd seen too much. Harper stared at it for a long time. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the screen, to the man who'd lost everything in 1992. "I'm so sorry I don't remember you." Inside, Theo had fallen asleep on the couch waiting for her. Harper covered him with a blanket, then curled up beside him, exhausted but sleepless. The fog was lifting slowly, revealing the jagged landscape beneath. She was Kennedy Hayes. She was Harper Ellis. She was both and neither, and tomorrow the unraveling would continue. The Decatur house sat quiet under a canopy of old water oaks, the kind of street where porches still held rocking chairs and neighbors waved from their yards, even if they didn't know your name anymore. It was a modest brick ranch, built in the late 60s, with azaleas gone wild along the foundation and a single carport sagging slightly on one side. Harper had inherited it 5 years earlier, but she'd never moved in. Too many echoes, she'd told Theo at the time, too much Margaret in every corner. Now, standing on the cracked concrete driveway with Alex Rivera and Riley Chen, she understood the echoes differently. The search team had come and gone the day before, leaving behind the faint residue of fingerprint dust and the smell of official intrusion. They'd cataloged everything in the locked metal box from the attic. Kennedy's real documents, the newspaper clipping, a handful of childhood artifacts Margaret had apparently taken the day of the abduction, a tiny yellow hair ribbon, one white sandal too small for any child Harper remembered being. But the house itself held subtler secrets. Alex had asked Harper to walk through it with them, not as a suspect, never that, but as someone who might notice what strangers wouldn't. Patterns, habits, the shape of a life built around a lie. She hesitated at the threshold, key cold in her palm. Theo had offered to come, but she'd refused. This felt like something she needed to face alone, or as alone as possible with 2 detectives trailing behind. Inside, the air was stale. thick with the ghost of Margaret's lavender sachets and the must of years undisturbed. The living room was frozen in 2017. Floral sofa with plastic still on the armrests, a console TV that hadn't worked since the analog switchover, framed cross-stitch samplers on the UE walls. Home sweet home, bless this house. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Harper moved through it like a sleepwalker. The kitchen with its yellow apple wallpaper, faded now but still cheerful in a forced way. The table where they'd eaten silent dinners, Margaret at the head, Harper at the side, hands folded for grace that always felt too long. The refrigerator still held a single magnet, a peach from the Georgia State Fair, 1998. Harper's school photo from that year was stuck beneath it, 4th grade, gap-toothed smile, hair in uneven pigtails Margaret had insisted on doing herself. She was good at some things, Harper said quietly, more to herself than the detectives. Braids, perfect part down the middle every time. Riley made a note on her tablet, gentle. Did she work from home at all? Any jobs that might have taken her north in July '92? Harper shook her head. Secretary at a law firm on Claremont Road. She left at 7:45 every morning, back by 6:15. Clockwork. Except those 3 weeks. She trailed off, remembering Margaret's explanation years later. A mission trip to rebuild after Hurricane Andrew, helping families who'd lost everything. Harper had been proud of her then. They moved to the bedrooms. Margaret's first, severe, everything beige and white, bed made with hospital corners, a Bible on the nightstand, pages worn soft at Psalms and Proverbs. No photographs except one, Margaret at 25, standing beside a woman who must have been her sister, both smiling stiffly in Sunday dresses. The sister who died in childbirth. Harper lingered on that photo. The resemblance was there. The same thin lips, the same watchful eyes. Margaret had never spoken of her. Grief too deep, she'd said once, when Harper asked about extended family. We're all we have now, sweetheart. Just us. The second bedroom had been Harper's, converted to storage after Margaret's death, but traces remained. A twin bed pushed against the wall, pale. Pink paint peeling at the corners, a shelf where stuffed animals had once lived. Harper opened the closet slowly. Boxes labeled in Margaret's handwriting, Harper, baby clothes, Harper, school papers, Harper, artwork. She pulled down the artwork box with shaking hands. Inside, finger paintings from preschool, report cards with careful A's in conduct, a Mother's Day card from 1995 scrawled in wobbly crayon. To Mommy Margaret, I love you bigger than the sky. Harper's throat closed. She set it aside carefully, as if it might explode. Alex watched from the doorway, giving her space. Anything stand out? Anything that felt off, even as a kid? Harper thought, really thought, sifting through the fog of childhood for cracks. She never let me have playdates, said other children were rough or their parents unreliable. I had Sunday school friends, but no one came here, ever. And pictures, she hated being photographed, said it stole your soul. But she took hundreds of me. Polaroids mostly. Said she wanted to remember every stage. Riley nodded. We found albums in the attic, dozens, all of you starting from age 4.5. The basement was last. Concrete steps creaking under their weight, the air cooler and damper. Margaret had used it for storage and laundry, a single bulb swinging from the ceiling. The washer and dryer were gone, sold with the appliances after death, but the utility sink remained, stained with years of bleach. Against the far wall, a row of plastic bins labeled meticulously. Christmas, taxes 1990-2000, sewing, and one unmarked. Alex pried it open while Harper hung back. Inside, folders, bank statements, insurance policies, and a manila envelope thick with papers. Riley spread them on an old workbench under the bulb's harsh light. Margaret's diary, not daily, but sporadic entries starting in 1975, the year her sister died. Pages of grief at first, then bitterness. Church friends marrying, having babies. Margaret at 30, 35, 40, still alone. Entries about fertility treatments she couldn't afford, about adoption agencies turning her down. Single woman, modest income, not ideal placement. One entry from 1990. Lord, if it's your will, send me a child. I have so much love to give. This house is too quiet. Another from June 1992. Saw her at the library story hour, perfect, auburn curls like Ruth's baby would have had, the mother barely watching, so many careless people blessed with what they don't deserve. Harper read over Riley's shoulder, stomach turning. July 11th, 1992. Tomorrow. White van cleaned. Story ready. She'll be frightened at first, but children adapt. They'll thank me one day for saving her from that chaotic family. July 13th. She's crying for Mama. Locked the door. Told her Mama and Daddy are with Jesus now. She'll believe it soon. Children believe what you tell them if you say it enough. The entries grew mundane after that. First doctor's visit, forged papers. First haircut, first day of preschool as Harper Margaret Ellis, Margaret to honor the aunt she'd become in the new narrative. The last relevant entry, 2005. She's growing into such a lady. Asked about her real parents again. Told her the truth hurts too much. She accepted it. My good girl. Thank you, Lord, for answering my prayer. Harper backed away until her spine hit the concrete wall. The air felt suddenly too thin. She prayed for me, she whispered, like I was a gift. Alex closed the diary gently. Margaret was active in her church, elder, Sunday school teacher. In that world, 1990s Southern Baptist, being a single woman without children carried stigma, whispers, pity. She told people she'd adopted privately after her niece was orphaned. No one questioned it deeply. She had the paperwork, good forgeries from her law firm connections, and a child who called her family. Riley added softly, she isolated you to protect the lie. No close friends who might notice inconsistencies, no family reunions, just the two of you, and God approving. Harper slid down the wall until she sat on the cold floor. The basement smelled of earth and old detergent, the same scent that had clung to Margaret's clothes on laundry days. I was her miracle, Harper said, voice breaking, her answered prayer. And all I was stolen. Upstairs, the afternoon light slanted through dusty blinds, catching motes like tiny ghosts. Harper stood in the living room again, looking at the cross-stitches. Bless this house. She wondered how many times Margaret had sat in her recliner, embroidering those words, convinced she was righteous. Alex's phone buzzed. Captain Torres. He stepped outside to take it, leaving Harper and Riley in the heavy silence. You okay? Riley asked finally. No, Harper said, but I will be. Eventually, I think. She walked to the front window, watched a neighbor watering petunias across the street. Normal life continuing, oblivious. I keep thinking about Clara, she said, how she died thinking I was gone forever. 20 miles away, eating dinner at this table, calling another woman Mommy. Riley had no answer for that. When Alex returned, his face was carefully neutral. We notified Robert Hayes this morning, with a counselor present. He's overwhelmed, asked if you're safe, said to take whatever time you need. Harper nodded, tears starting again. Tell him thank you, and that I'm sorry for not remembering, for all of it. She locked the house behind them, the click of the deadbolt sounding final. The azaleas were blooming wild and pink, the Georgia spring indifferent to human heartbreak. In the car on the way back to Atlanta, Harper stared out at the familiar suburbs sliding past, places she'd known her whole life, now alien. She thought of Margaret's diary, the meticulous care in building a false world. The lie had been perfect, almost, but DNA didn't care about prayers or perfect braids or Sunday grace. It only cared about truth. And the truth, Harper realized as the skyline rose ahead, was only just beginning to destroy and rebuild her. The meeting was arranged for a Saturday morning in early June, when the ice of Georgia heat hadn't yet turned brutal and the dogwoods were still holding their blooms. They chose neutral ground, a small private room at the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office Annex, far enough from Atlanta to feel like a concession to Robert, close enough for Harper to drive without overnighting. Dr. Vasquez had coordinated it for weeks. Phone calls with Robert's counselor, sessions with Harper and Theo, ground rules typed and retyped, no media, no surprises, no pressure for hugs or tears or instant forgiveness, just a door opening and two worlds trying not to shatter on contact. Harper arrived early, Theo's hand steady in hers as they parked in the near-empty lot. She wore a simple linen dress, pale blue, the closest thing she had to something soft and unthreatening. Her hair, those auburn curls that had once been Kennedy's hallmark, was pulled back loosely. No makeup. She wanted to look like herself, whoever that was now. Inside, the room was deliberately bland. Beige walls, a drawer, round wooden table, 6 chairs, a box of tissues centered like an offering, bottled water, a window overlooking a patchy lawn and distant pines. Dr. Vasquez greeted them with a calm nod, then stepped out to bring in the others. Harper's heart hammered so hard she could feel it in her throat. Theo squeezed her hand once more before letting go. She'd asked him to sit back during the first moments, give her space to breathe. The door opened again. Robert Hayes entered first, moving slowly, as if the air itself resisted him. He was taller than she'd expected from the Facebook photo, though stooped now with age and weight of years. 64 looked older on him, gray stubble, deep lines carved around eyes the same hazel as hers, wearing pressed khakis and a light blue button-down that matched her dress by accident. His hands trembled slightly at his sides. Behind him came Jack, tall like their father, broader, with darker hair receding at the temples and the wary posture of a man who'd spent 30 years bracing for bad news. He wore a teacher's uniform, polo shirt, jeans, sensible shoes. His eyes, brown, not hazel, went straight to Harper and stayed there. No one spoke for a long moment. Robert broke first, voice rough as red clay gravel. "Kennedy?" Harper's breath caught. The name still felt foreign in others' mouths. She managed a small nod. "Hi. People call me Harper now, but yes, it's me." Robert took one hesitant step forward, then another, until he stood just across the table. His eyes searched her face like he was memorizing it, afraid it might vanish again. "Lord have mercy," he whispered. "You're the spittin' image of your mama at 30. Tears welled instantly in Harper's eyes. She'd prepared for this, practiced responses in therapy, but nothing prepared her for the raw recognition in his voice. "I'm sorry," she said, the words tumbling out. "I'm sorry I don't remember you. Any of it. I wish—" Robert shook his head fiercely, tears already tracking down weathered cheeks. "Don't you apologize. Not for 1 second. You were 4 years old. Ain't nothing for you to be sorry about." Jack moved then, pulling out a chair for his father, then one for himself. His voice was steadier, but strained. "We brought some things. If you're ready. If not, we can wait." Harper nodded, throat too tight for words. Theo gave her an encouraging glance from his seat against the wall. Jack placed a small fabric photo album on the table, faded denim cover, the kind sold at craft fairs in the 80s. "Mama made this, for your birthdays after you were gone. Every year she'd add a page, things she wanted to tell you, pictures she found that reminded her of you." Harper's hands shook as she opened it. The first page. Kennedy at 3, blowing bubbles in the backyard. Clara's neat handwriting beneath, "You loved bubbles more than any toy. Chased them till you fell over laughing. I miss that laugh every day." Next page. A pressed dogwood blossom and a photo of the ranch house porch. "Planted this tree the spring you turned 2. You helped me dig the hole with your plastic shovel. Said you were making a home for the fairies." Page after page. Birthdays. Clara had marked alone, cakes baked and candles blown out. By proxy. Report cards Harper never earned, milestones never reached. Clara's writing grew shakier toward the end, the entries shorter. The last one, dated 1998, the year she died. 10 years old today. I love you bigger than the sky, baby girl. Wait for mama. Harper traced the words with one finger, tears dripping onto the plastic sleeves. She kept hoping. Always, Robert said quietly. Even when the rest of us, when I couldn't anymore. She said mothers know, said you'd come home one day. Jack cleared his throat. I was supposed to watch you that day at the picnic. I turned away for 2 minutes, throwing that damn frisbee. And when I looked back, his voice cracked. I've carried that every day since, thought it was my fault. Harper looked up at him, at this stranger who was her brother, whose 10-year-old guilt had calcified into a man's regret. You were 10, she said softly. It wasn't your fault. The words seemed to release something in him. Jack's shoulders sagged, and he nodded, eyes wet. Robert reached into a canvas bag he'd brought, pulled out something wrapped in tissue. This was yours. Clara saved it. Said you'd want it back when you came home. He unwrapped a small stuffed rabbit, worn, one ear floppy, fur thinned from love. Hopper, the one from the missing posters. Harper took it with reverent hands. It smelled faintly of cedar from whatever drawer it had lived in for 30 years. She pressed it to her chest without thinking, the gesture automatic, childlike. I don't remember him, she admitted, but it feels right, holding it. Robert smiled through tears. You slept with that rabbit every night, carried him everywhere. When you were 3, you insisted he needed his own place at the dinner table. They talked then, slowly, carefully. Robert told her about Clara's laugh, how she'd sing old Patsy Cline songs while cooking, about teaching Kennedy to fish in the Etowah when she was barely walking. Jack shared memories of pushing her on the swing, reading her green eggs and ham until he had it memorized. Harper listened, hungry for the stories even as they highlighted the vast emptiness where her own memories should be. She told them about her life as Harper, the quiet creativity, the love of photography that now felt inherited, the marriage to Theo, who waved from the corner when introduced. At one point Robert asked, voice hesitant, "Do you hate her? The woman who took you?" Harper considered. "I don't know yet. Some days, yes. Some days I remember Sunday teas and perfect braids and how safe I felt with her. It's complicated." Robert nodded. "Grief usually is." They didn't hug when it ended 2 hours later. Not yet. But Robert placed his hand over Harper's on the table, calloused, warm, trembling, and she didn't pull away. Driving back to Atlanta, Theo reached for her hand at a red light. "How are you?" Harper stared out at the passing pines, Hopper the rabbit on the seat between them like a small passenger. "I don't know," she said honestly, "but I think I want to see them again when I'm ready." Theo smiled, squeezed her fingers. "Then we'll go again." That night, Harper sat on the balcony with the photo album and the rabbit. She opened her phone's camera, her digital one, not film for once, and took a picture of Hopper against the city lights. Then she opened a new message to the phone number Dr. Vasquez had given her, Robert's, sent the photo with a simple text. "Thank you for keeping him safe." The reply came 10 minutes later. "Welcome home, Kennedy, whenever you're ready." She didn't correct the name, not this time. The bridge across 30 lost years was fragile, built of careful words and shared grief. But it was there. And for the first time since the DNA match, Harper felt something like the faintest stir of hope. 3 years passed like Georgia seasons, slow, humid, sometimes stormy, but always moving forward. By the spring of 2025, Harper Ellis had become Harper Kennedy Hayes in the places that mattered most. Not on every legal form. The courts had allowed a compromise, Harper Kennedy Hayes Ellis, a hyphenated bridge between the woman she'd been raised to be and the child she'd never stopped being. She kept Harper for daily life, for the business cards that now read Harper Hayes Photography, for the signature on her prints that were starting to sell in small galleries around Atlanta and Savannah. The journey hadn't been linear. There were months when the weight of it all, the stolen years, the grief for 2 mothers, the guilt of surviving when Clara hadn't, threatened to pull her under. Therapy with Dr. Vasquez became twice weekly, then monthly check-ins. Theo stayed. Not perfectly. He had his own exhaustion, his own quiet resentments on the nights she couldn't be touched or talked to. But he stayed. They learned new languages for their marriage, space when needed, honesty when it hurt, small rituals like Sunday morning coffee on the balcony where words weren't required. The media storm came and went. A local reporter got wind of the DNA match 6 months after the reunion, and for a while Harper couldn't buy groceries without recognizing her own childhood face on a tabloid cover. The girl who vanished for 30 years, found alive. Strangers approached her in Piedmont Park, wanting selfies, wanting miracles. A true crime podcast requested interviews. She said no to all of it. Eventually, the story faded, replaced by fresher tragedies. Robert's health declined steadily. The shock of resurrection, the joy of it, had given him a burst of life at first. He'd cleaned out the trailer, planted tomatoes again, even started attending church sporadically. But the years of grief had taken their toll, and his heart finally gave out in the winter of 2024. He died peacefully, Jack at his side, with Harper on speakerphone reading him one of Clara's old letters from the birthday album. The funeral was small, held in the same country church where Kennedy had been christened. Harper spoke. Not eloquently, just truthfully. About a father she'd never known but who had never stopped knowing her. About love that outlasted absence. Jack hugged her afterward, a real one this time, no hesitation. Robert left her the ranch house in Cumming, the one with the red clay driveway where Kennedy had learned to ride a tricycle. Harper and Theo sold their midtown condo and moved there, renovating slowly. They kept Clara's kitchen table, sanded and stained, but still the same wood. They turned Kennedy's old room into a dark room. Harper had switched almost entirely to film photography now, drawn to its deliberate slowness, the way it forced patience. The house became a quiet hub. Jack visited often with his wife and 2 kids, Harper's niece and nephew, who called her Aunt Harper without complication. They ran through the yard chasing fireflies in summer, the same way Kennedy once had. Harper photographed them obsessively, building the family album that should have existed all along. Some things never resolved neatly. Harper never recovered clear memories of her first 4 years. No sudden flashbacks, no dreams that unlocked the past. But the sensory echoes remained. The smell of barbecue still tightened her chest sometimes. Cicadas still brought an unexplained melancholy in July. She learned to sit with them, to let them be signposts rather than wounds. She thought of Margaret often, not with forgiveness exactly, that felt too large a word, but with understanding. A lonely woman shaped by a different era's expectations, who'd convinced herself theft was salvation. Harper kept one thing from the Decatur house, a small cross-stitch sampler Margaret had made in 1994. As for me and my house, it hung in the laundry room now, out of main sight but not hidden. A reminder that people are complicated, that love can be real, even when built on lies. On the 3rd anniversary of the DNA match, April 2025, Harper drove to Amicalola Falls alone. Not for drama, just for quiet. She walked the trail near the picnic area, now paved and tourist-friendly, families laughing around grills that smelled of charcoal in summer. She sat on a bench overlooking the lower falls, Hopper the rabbit in her bag like a talisman. She took out her Canon AE-1, Robert's old camera, the one he'd used to document Kennedy's early years, found in a box after his death. Loaded with fresh film, she photographed the water cascading over rocks, the light filtering through oaks, a little girl in a yellow dress chasing bubbles, echoes, but not painful ones anymore. Later, developing the rolls in her darkroom, one image stopped her. The little girl, mid-laugh, auburn curls flying, dressed the same shade Kennedy's had been in the old photos. For a moment, Harper's breath caught. Not recognition exactly, more like continuity, proof that childhood joy persisted, that some things couldn't be stolen completely. That night she printed the photo large, framed it, and hung it in the hallway beside one of Kennedy at 4, Clara's favorite, the one with Hopper clutched tight. 2 lives, 1 wall, no longer at war. Theo found her there, studying the pairing. Beautiful, he said simply. Harper nodded, hand resting on the slight curve of her belly. 5 months along now, a girl they'd already decided to name Clara Margaret, not to honor the theft, but to acknowledge the complexity. To say, we carry all of it, the light and the dark, and we keep going anyway. Outside, cicadas started their evening chorus, the Georgia night settling warm and heavy. Harper stood listening for a long moment. The sadness was still there, faint now, like an old bruise, but beneath it, something else. The sound of summer continuing, of life refusing to stay stolen. She closed the darkroom door, turned off the lights, and went to find Theo. Tomorrow there would be more photos to take, more prints to make, more ordinary days to live in this house that had waited 30 years for her to come home. The girl who vanished in 1992 was never fully coming back. But the woman who'd survived, Harper Kennedy Hayes Ellis, was finally, imperfectly, building something whole. And sometimes, in the quiet Georgia evenings, that was enough.